She seduced the most powerful men in Rome. She spoke 9 languages. She was a master of politics, warfare, and seduction. Her beauty was legendary, yet historians say she wasn't the most beautiful woman of her time. So what made Cleopatra VII of Egypt so irresistible that Julius Caesar and Mark Antony risked everything for her? The truth is far more fascinating than Hollywood movies have ever shown. Cleopatra wasn't Egyptian by blood. She was Greek. She wasn't just a seductress. She was a brilliant scholar and ruthless politician. And her death by snakebite, that might be the biggest lie in history. This is the secret life of Cleopatra, the last pharaoh of Egypt, the woman who nearly conquered Rome, and whose real story has been hidden behind 2,000 years of male propaganda and romantic myths. Prepare to discover the truth about the most powerful woman in ancient history. Born in 69 BC, Cleopatra grew up in the royal palace of Alexandria, one of the most magnificent cities in the ancient world. The Library of Alexandria held the knowledge of the entire known world. The Pharos Lighthouse, one of the 7 wonders, guided ships into the busiest port on Earth. But behind the golden facade, the Ptolemaic dynasty was rotting from within. Cleopatra's family had ruled Egypt for 3 centuries, ever since Alexander the Great's general Ptolemy seized power after Alexander's death. They were Greek, not Egyptian, and they kept their bloodline pure through incestuous marriages, brothers marrying sisters, uncles marrying nieces. The genetic consequences were devastating. Many Ptolemaic rulers were weak, deformed, or insane. Cleopatra's father, Ptolemy XII, was called the flute player because he cared more about music than ruling. Egypt was drowning in debt to Rome, and civil war was always one conspiracy away. Into this chaos, young Cleopatra learned a crucial lesson. Power isn't inherited, it's taken. When Cleopatra's father died in 51 BC, she was 18 years old. According to tradition, she had to marry her younger brother, Ptolemy XIII, who was only 10. They would rule together as co-pharaohs. But Cleopatra had no intention of sharing power with a child controlled by ambitious advisors. Within months, she pushed her brother aside and ruled alone, an outrageous move in a male-dominated world. The court advisors, led by the cunning eunuch Pothinus, plotted against her. They convinced young Ptolemy to declare war on his sister. By 48 BC, Cleopatra was forced to flee Egypt with a small group of loyal followers. Most rulers would have given up. Cleopatra saw opportunity. She knew that the real power in the Mediterranean wasn't in Egypt anymore. It was in Rome. And Rome's most powerful man, Julius Caesar, had just arrived in Alexandria chasing his rival Pompey. Cleopatra made a decision that would change history. She would seduce Caesar, not with beauty, but with something far more powerful, her brilliant mind. Then, around 1323 BC, when Tutankhamun was just 19 years old, something happened. The historical record goes silent. No detailed account of his death exists. One day the young pharaoh was alive, and the next, Egypt was preparing for his funeral. The suddenness shocked the kingdom. Preparation for a pharaoh's tomb usually took decades, but Tutankhamun's burial was rushed, completed in just 70 days. This suggests his death was completely unexpected. Theories have multiplied over the centuries. Was it murder? His skull showed damage that some interpreted as a fatal blow. Was it a chariot accident? His ribs were broken. Was it infection from his clubfoot? Medical evidence suggests gangrene. Or was it complications from malaria, which his mummy tested positive for? The truth is, we may never know for certain. What we do know is that powerful men stood to gain from his death. Within months, his elderly advisor, I married the widowed Ankhesenamun and took the throne. Then General Horemheb seized power and tried to erase Tutankhamun from history entirely, removing his name from official records. The boy king who should have been forgotten was buried with unimaginable treasures and sealed away in a small, hastily prepared tomb. For over 3,000 years, Tutankhamun slept undisturbed while the world above changed beyond recognition. Empires rose and fell. Egypt itself was conquered by Persians, Greeks, Romans, Arabs, and Ottomans. The Valley of the Kings was plundered by tomb robbers who found and stripped nearly every other royal burial. But Tutankhamun's tomb remained hidden, buried under debris from later construction. By the early 1900s, most archaeologists believed the valley held no more secrets. But Howard Carter refused to give up. Funded by the wealthy Lord Carnarvon, Carter spent 6 frustrating years finding nothing. In 1922, Carnarvon was ready to quit. He gave Carter one final season. On November 4th, just days into this last attempt, a water boy working with Carter's team accidentally discovered a stone step buried in the sand. Carter's heart must have raced as his workers carefully excavated. One step became 12, revealing a sealed doorway bearing the royal seals of the necropolis. But whose tomb was it? The next day, they found the answer. Cartouches bearing the name Tutankhamun, a pharaoh so obscure that most scholars had barely heard of him. Carter sent an urgent telegram to Lord Carnarvon in England. It took 2 weeks for Carnarvon and his daughter Lady Evelyn to arrive in Egypt. The tension during those weeks must have been unbearable. Had tomb robbers already found what lay beyond? On November 26th, with witnesses present, Carter made a small hole in the doorway and held up a candle. The flame flickered from ancient air that hadn't moved in millennia. What he saw took his breath away. The antechamber was piled wall to wall with treasures. Golden couches shaped like animals, chariots, weapons, furniture, statues, and countless other objects glinting in the candlelight. But this was just the beginning. It took Carter and his team nearly 10 years to catalog and remove over 5,000 objects from the tomb's 4 rooms. The burial chamber itself contained 4 golden shrines nested inside each other like Russian dolls, and within them, a stone sarcophagus. Inside there were 3 coffins, the innermost made of solid gold weighing over 200 pounds. And finally, there was Tutankhamun himself, his mummy adorned with a golden death mask that has become the most recognizable artifact from ancient Egypt. The discovery made headlines worldwide and sparked Egyptomania that continues today. The newspapers loved a good story, and they were about to get one that would sell millions of copies. Just months after the tomb's opening, Lord Carnarvon traveled to Cairo. In March 1923, he was bitten on the cheek by a mosquito. In his hotel bathroom, he accidentally cut open the bite while shaving. In an era before antibiotics, this minor injury turned deadly. The wound became infected, then septic. Carnarvon developed pneumonia and, on April 5, 1923, died in his hotel room at age 57. Legend says that at the exact moment of his death, all the lights in Cairo mysteriously went out. Back in England, his dog howled and dropped dead. Even stranger, when scientists later unwrapped Tutankhamun's mummy, they found a wound on his left cheek in the exact same location as the mosquito bite that killed Carnarvon. Newspapers exploded with sensational headlines. Pharaoh's curse strikes. The story seemed too perfect to be coincidence. But this was only the first death. Arthur Mace, the American archaeologist who helped Carter open the tomb, died in the same Cairo hotel as Carnarvon just months later. Cause of death? Unknown. The curse had claimed its second victim. Cleopatra also understood propaganda and image-making better than any ruler of her era. She portrayed herself as the living embodiment of the goddess Isis, the perfect mother and divine queen. On her coins, she appeared with a hooked nose and strong features. Not conventionally beautiful, but powerful and distinctive. She knew that respect mattered more than prettiness. She staged elaborate religious ceremonies where she appeared in Egyptian dress, performing ancient rituals that connected her to the pharaohs of old. But when dealing with Greeks and Romans, she dressed in Greek style and quoted Greek philosophy. She was a chameleon, adapting her image to her audience while never losing her core identity. This cultural fluidity was her superpower. She could speak to Egyptian priests about the gods, debate philosophy with Greek scholars, and discuss military tactics with Roman generals, and be respected by all of them. No other ruler in history has so successfully bridged multiple cultures. This is why both Caesar and Antony fell for her. She wasn't just a woman. She was a force of nature wrapped in intelligence, adaptability, and absolute confidence. But was it really a curse? Or could science explain these deaths? Skeptics were quick to point out several facts. First, that supposed curse inscription, it never existed. No such text was found in Tutankhamun's tomb. Second, many people who entered the tomb lived long lives. Howard Carter himself, who spent more time in the tomb than anyone, lived until 1939, dying of lymphoma at age 64, 17 years after the discovery. Dr. Derry, who performed the autopsy on Tutankhamun's mummy, lived until 1961. Lady Evelyn, Lord Carnarvon's daughter who was present at the opening, lived until 1980, dying at age 79. If there was a curse, it seemed to be remarkably selective. Third, statistical analysis shows that the death rate among people who entered the tomb was not significantly higher than the general population for people of similar age and social class in that era. Many of the victims were already elderly or had pre-existing health conditions. Medical experts also noted that Egypt in the 1920s was dangerous for Europeans regardless of curses. Mosquito-borne diseases, contaminated water, and poor sanitation killed many visitors. However, modern science has discovered something genuinely dangerous lurking in ancient tombs that the 1920s researchers couldn't have known about. When archaeologists and microbiologists examined sealed Egyptian tombs in recent decades, they found dangerous pathogens that had survived for thousands of years in the dry, enclosed environment. Deadly molds and fungi, including aspergillus and other toxins, can colonize mummies and tomb walls. When disturbed, these microorganisms become airborne and can be inhaled, causing severe respiratory infections, pneumonia, and in people with weakened immune systems, death. This condition is now called tomb fever, or more scientifically, cave disease. Lord Carnarvon already had weakened lungs from a car accident years before. Arthur Mace was known to be in poor health. These men breathed in ancient air filled with millennia-old biological hazards. In the 1970s, researchers studying King Casimir IV of Poland's tomb all fell mysteriously ill. Tests revealed toxic fungi that had survived in the sealed coffin for centuries. Perhaps the curse was actually ancient biology taking revenge on those who disturbed it. Nature created a perfect defense system for the pharaoh's eternal rest. Whether real or imagined, the curse of King Tutankhamun captured the world's imagination and never let go. The 1920s discovery coincided perfectly with Hollywood's golden age, and filmmakers immediately exploited the public's fascination with ancient Egypt and supernatural horror. The 1932 film The Mummy, starring Boris Karloff, was directly inspired by Tutankhamun's curse and established the template for countless mummy movies to follow. The image of a vengeful mummy wrapped in bandages, rising to punish those who disturbed its tomb, became an iconic horror archetype. Books, radio shows, comic books, and later television shows featured cursed Egyptian artifacts and vengeful pharaohs. In the 1960s and 70s, renewed interest in ancient Egypt spawned more mummy films and curse stories. The blockbuster 1999 film The Mummy and its sequels brought the curse legend to a new generation, mixing action, adventure, and horror. Video games like Tomb Raider featured curse elements. Even museums reported strange occurrences when displaying Tutankhamun artifacts. In 1972, when the treasures toured international museums, directors of the Cairo Museum initially refused to allow the golden mask to leave, fearing the curse. The fascination goes beyond entertainment. Tutankhamun's curse has become a case study in how myths develop and persist despite evidence. Psychologists point to several factors. First, confirmation bias. People remember deaths connected to the curse while forgetting people who lived long lives after visiting the tomb. Second, the narrative is compelling. A young king who died mysteriously, fabulous treasure, exotic location, and convenient deaths make for an irresistible story. Third, there's a moral dimension. Many people felt the tomb robbing, even in the name of archaeology, was disrespectful and deserved punishment. The curse represents cosmic justice. Fourth, the mystery appeals to our desire to believe that ancient peoples possessed knowledge and powers we've lost. The idea that Egyptian priests could craft a curse that still works 3,000 years later suggests magic might be real. Finally, there's the fundamental human need to find meaning in tragedy. When Lord Carnarvon died suddenly, calling it a curse was more comforting than accepting it was just bad luck. The curse gives death purpose and pattern. This psychological power ensures that the curse legend will never truly die, regardless of scientific evidence.